Hey everybody, it's Allie, and welcome to our YNR chat for Sunday, February 15th, 2015. The Neil storyline has gone on for months too long. I mean, 2-3 months too long. It should have, in my opinion, been resolved fairly quickly. The blind thing was just, it was dragged out beyond what's reasonable. But I tell you, this week I felt like it was completely worth it. It was completely worth the wait. It's almost like we had to experience as viewers the extent of the betrayal for ourselves. It had to reach a fevered pitch, and it did. It really did. There's supposed to be so much going on YNR this week and next week, and I just don't even know if anything can top this whole thing with Neil for me. The payoff is just so worth it. I'm glad that Neil didn't just explode. He walks in, sees Devon and Hillary having sex, and he could have blown up in that moment. He could have said, "What is going on here?" He could have been enraged. He could have tossed Devon's room. But as I kind of theorized and expected, Neil just backed out of the room. He made his face, backed out of the room, grabbed his cane, and just bided his time. I could have even stand it for him to bide his time even longer than he did. By the end of the week, he revealed all, but I could have let it continue going on. Neil pretends to continue to be blind. He stumbles down the stairs, and he has to go through the process of not only realizing that his wife and his son are sleeping together, but he doesn't know at this point how long it's been going on. He doesn't know anything about the circumstances. Furthermore, he doesn't know who else knows about it. He doesn't know how long and how much of a fool that he's been made. So he kind of goes through this series of tests, and first he sees Kane, hands Kane back the hotel room key, realizes that Kane knew everything. I feel bad because I think Kane is going to take so much more flack for this than he really needed to. I 100% believe Kane was tired of the lie, wanted Neil to find out, but just didn't want to be the guy to blow it all up. So he sent Neil up there to discover for himself. And I wish maybe Neil would have put that together, but instead he looks at Kane. I mean, everything was just in slow motion with Neil this week. I'm surprised nobody guessed something was really, really wrong with him. But Neil figures out that Kane knew. He has a little brief interaction with Lily and realizes that she's innocent because she's still singing Hillary's praises left and right. So Neil's trying to assess the situation, and he sits down, and I loved the moment where a waiter comes over and asks him if anybody's gonna be joining him, and he said, "Yes, I'm expecting 2 more guests any moment now." He realizes that Devon and Hillary are gonna come walking down those stairs, and I think he wanted to get a gauge of how long this is going on. Devon comes down the stairs, walks over, sits down with him, and it's very casual. And I think that indicated to Neil that there's not a lot of guilt with Devon. He wasn't sensing oh, this just happened for the first time. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. There was a comfort in the lie. And I think that really, really set Neil off. It was a great first scene between he and Devon. Devon is saying all of the right things about how much he, cares about Neil and admires him. And I'm thinking, I guess part of my issue with the betrayal throughout the process has been focused on Devon, because I remember when Devon was a kid from a broken home that Drusilla brought home and adopted and completely folded into their family and accepted as nothing less than their own son. And Neil had a hard time with it at first, but he came to completely embrace Devon as his own son, even beyond the point where we knew who his real father was. Neil never was anything except a wonderful father and a good role model for Devon when he didn't have anything of the sort. And for me, that's always made the betrayal seem so much deeper, so much bigger and more seedy and just seething. So I think that had to have been all swirling around in Neil's head as he's having this first conversation with Devon too. And as soon as Devon leaves, Neil goes off on his own, and where does he head to? I mean, point one, Hillary and Devon were correct in the fact that they assumed the second Neil found out about this information that he would start drinking again. That's exactly what he did. All that sobriety down the hatch. He goes immediately to that little bar on the outskirts of town where nobody except everybody knows where it is, and he sits right down at the bar, and we watch him take his first drink in a long time. Do you guys remember when Neil was a drunk after Drusilla died? And it was long, it was drawn out, it was dark. I mean, when Christoph St. John plays Neil as an alcoholic, it is down and it is dirty and it is depressing. So it was a moment where watching him put the glass to his lips, I just felt, Neil, this is the beginning of what just simply cannot be good. It's not going to end well for anyone. It never really was. It was never going to be a happy ending. But what was kind of a happy coincidence is, as all this is going down with Neil, Nicki got her own problems, which we'll talk about later, and she walks through the door of the bar. Nicki's been off the wagon for several weeks, maybe even months now at this point, but she thinks she's gonna go on into this bar where she's been sneak drinking for who knows how long. She walks through the door, sees Neil there, and tries like to get out of it. You remember that time, I don't know, a while ago when she was in an AA meeting and was gonna speak and then realized Neil was there, and she kind of hightailed it out of the room. It was sort of like that. She thought, oh, he's blind, he won't know. And much to my surprise, Neil just looks right at her and is like, yeah, I can see. You might as well come down over here, have a drink. I get it. It was kind of an unexpected moment of camaraderie. Neil is saying to Nicki, I know exactly what you're going through. Come on, girl, come have a seat. We're both gonna talk this through, and we're gonna have some drinks. I get tired of Nicki being drunk, but I'm gonna enjoy just Neil's drunkenness for a little bit until it gets too worn out on me, because the way Christoph St. John is playing it, it's so slurry and just slow, and Neil is saying, oh, I can see. It was really good. It was so good. I mean, and he lays everything out to Nicki, not just that he's drinking, but that he walked in on his wife and his son having sex today. Even just hearing it coming out of Neil's mouth like that was so powerful for me, and I enjoyed seeing him reveal what was going on within himself, within his conscience, with Nicki, and it gave Nicki an opportunity to share and to be honest as well. These are both two people who feel betrayed by someone who they love and who they're supposed to be able to trust, and now they're kind of coming together and developing a friendship, which I sort of like. I think there could be some potential for their friendship maybe later on, even into the future. future. But I really appreciated being able to get the Neil's perspective, and that he's not really interested in just forgiving and forgetting. He is interested in a little bit of revenge. Which is what I'm really excited for too. I'm interested in that too. The scene where Neil first comes face to face with Hillary after learning the truth was incredible. He goes to, they apparently missed each other the night before, so he goes to Jabot looking for her, and he's also trying to get a sense of what's really been going on here. So he's continuing to be blind, and he bumps into her almost in the hall and says, "Hillary, is that you?" And she says nothing. She's become so comfortable with the lie. She almost let Neil walk off, and like she was gonna pretend to not be herself, which is so cold and so cruel. And I think even that little action said everything that Neil needed to know. She kind of had more of an attack of conscience, and she goes up behind him and says, "Oh, Neil, it is me." I don't know why she didn't need to explain the fact that she was trying to dodge him, but there's this moment where, again, he's trying to understand where her head is, what her motives were, and seeing the look on her face for the first time made Neil realize the depths and the dirtiness of the deception, and the way Neil delivered everything he said in that scene so slow, and just the whole really week, Neil was just keeping it, just the absolute pure rage. He was just keeping it beneath the surface. I mean, it was bubbling up a little bit, but then he'd bring it back down, and it was that. In that scene, it was very that. You could tell that there was a moment where he's kind of touching Hillary's face and her neck a little bit, and you could almost sense that he wanted to just snap her neck. I mean, there was almost a silent violence beneath the touch. Like he really could just grab her neck and choke her to death in that moment. So there's one layer of the deception that applies to his son, but the fact that Hillary laid there next to him night after night and pretended to be his partner, his lover, that not only, he's starting to realize, was she sleeping with me, but she was sleeping with me and my son at the same time. Ugh. And I think it's all just sinking in this moment, and it was so dark and so suspenseful, and he was just laying it on really thick about what a great wife she was. It was wonderful. And Hillary was reaching a fevered pitch this week. She wants to tell Neil. She doesn't want to go on with this lie any longer than she has to. It's this entire time it's been about, let's save Neil's feelings, when they were never going to save Neil's feelings. It was always going to be a betrayal, but they allowed it to become even more of a betrayal, which is, they can't get out of this. There's no escaping this. And it occurred to me too, there was even a scene when they were lying in bed together after Neil had seen them, and Devon especially just completely justifies it all as, but we love each other. It's not just that we're having sex, we love each other, so it's okay. They've completely justified the betrayal by saying we love each other and not really ever considering Neil's feelings. If they were at all considering Neil's feelings, I think they wouldn't have taken it this far. It's ultimately so completely selfish and the opposite of the meaning of love. And I think Neil knows that. He's realizing that. And the bubbling is just starting to come up. It's just starting to get there. Hillary wants to tell Neil the truth immediately. Devon's trying to convince her yet again, no, maybe we shouldn't. We don't want him to fall off the wagon, or, you know, he just learned about he's not going to be able to see again. We don't want to ruin that. So why don't we just continue the lie for a little bit longer? Oh yeah, because Neil was even telling Hillary that he wanted to do something special for her for Valentine's Day, lover. Oh, and Devon says, you know what? Kane and Jill have been invited by some bigwig to go up to Chicago and check out a new office for Chancellor Industries. And they're going to be taking this trip on this jet. Why don't we make it a family trip? We'll invite, you know, you, me, Neil, Lily, Kane, Jill, Colin. We'll all go on this trip. It'll be a family thing. And then that way, at least we'll be able to spend some time together on Valentine's Day. Because, of course, again, it's all about them and all about their feelings while pretending that it's about Neil. So that's the plan. They all get on this plane. And everybody's completely unaware. It was Jill, Colin, Lily, Kane, and Devon, and Hillary, and Neil, and everybody on that plane, that's private jet, was just going about their lives as usual. And Neil is sitting back for the first time observing his family and realizing what the subcontext is here. And he's been drinking, I'm sure he's been drinking throughout this process, probably before he gets on the plane, but he begins to have this really surly internal dialogue where he looks at each and every one of these members of his family and begins to judge them. You know, Jill, you haven't changed at all. Colin, you know, even Neil had a conversation with Colin where he sort of realized that Colin was blackmailing Devon, and he knew about the relationship the entire time. There's not one innocent person in this plane except for Lily. Even Kane betrayed him. I mean, it was an all-around betrayal by people who were supposed to love and trust and protect him. And I felt, you know, he starts to talk about, you know, none of these people are gonna deserve this, sorry, they're all gonna deserve this except for you, Lily, my sweet Lily. You're the one innocent in all of this, and I'm sorry that you're gonna be hurt by this, but everyone else deserves to suffer. Woo! And little by little, everybody starts to talk about, gosh, why aren't we there yet? Shouldn't we be in Chicago by now? This flight is taking so long. And Neil stands up and he goes over to the bar. He grabs a bottle of liquor. He begins to pour some in the glass, and Lily says, oh no, Dad, you don't want to do that. That's liquor. And Neil says, oh, I know it's liquor. It seems to be a 14-year-old single malt scotch, as a matter of fact, revealing to everyone that, oh yeah, I can see just fine, and I can see everything. Oh yeah, by the way, I don't really care it's none of your business if I'm drinking. He takes a big old long slow drink of what's in the glass. Everybody is dumbfounded. Everybody is standing there shocked, and for the first time, Neil is looking Devon and Hillary dead in the eye, looking them straight in the face as they're looking at him back and realizing that, oh crap, oh crap, he knows everything. It gave me chills. It was so good. And I don't entirely know what the next step in this story is going to be, or what exactly is going to happen. We're starting to see weird electrical power outages throughout Genoa City. I don't know if there's going to be some kind of electrical storm or something, because we know from watching the previews, I guess, sorry, spoilers, but I talked about it last week. So if you don't like spoilers, stop listening. But we know that that private jet's gonna come down. I mean, it's gonna crash, and somehow probably everyone is gonna survive. And don't spoil me too either, if you know, because that's all I know, is that somehow the jet's gonna come down, and I don't really know how. I don't know if it's like gonna be an electrical storm. I don't know where they are actually headed. I don't know if Neil had them circling Genoa City as opposed to even going to Chicago. I don't know if he had them going off on a different destination. I don't know if Neil's gonna have anything to do with the fact that the plane's gonna crash, but he's talking all crazy, like suicidal, like, you know, I can't remember what he said, but there was sort of an implication of like, you know, revenge has to be had, you know, you guys have to pay. So I'm not sure if it's gonna be Neil, I'm not sure if it's gonna be an accident. I'm not sure if Neil is gonna bring down the plane with the pure power of his rage. The other thing that we know from that Valentine's week promo that ONeil released is that the underground is going to collapse, and we're already starting to see signs of that. A building inspector has been coming by, unbeknownst to us, and trying to tell Nick that there's structural issues with the underground. Again, big surprise, it's a freaking warehouse. But so the building inspector has been coming by, but the messages about this have not been relayed to Nick, because all of the messages have been going to Austin, and Austin hasn't been telling Nick. And I'm starting to wonder, for the first time this week, is Austin actually a bad guy? Is there any chance that he had done it on purpose? Because Summer kind of grabs Austin by his ear and brings him over to talk to Nick this week, and Nick is understandably furious. This is a message that wasn't relayed to him. Nick lashes out at Austin or scolds him, and Austin is very, very offended by it. He doesn't like being treated like a child, I suppose. But I think Austin is also not appreciating being under the Newman thumb. He loves Summer, he has this relationship with Summer, but I think he feels oppressed by the money. I think he feels oppressed by needing the job from Summer's father, and it's all starting to come to a boil. In fact, Austin and Summer got in an argument over it this week, and she told him in no certain terms, you screwed up, and I just wish that you would have taken responsibility for the job that you have. Whereas Austin is arguing, I don't even want this job. This isn't the job that I want. I'm doing it for you. I would rather be doing the type of job that I trained and studied to do. And they get in this huge argument. Later on, he quits. He says he's no longer going to be working at the underground. He goes to the underground to get his things, and he sends a text message out to someone that just says unknown on his phone, and the message was, "Are you awake?" And the message came back, it was something like, "Yeah, I'm awake, what do you have in mind?" Or the music that was playing over that scene was sort of sexual in nature. The vocals were saying something, you know, it just was like, I don't know, I got this sexual vibe. So in my head it was a booty call. I thought, okay, well, maybe he's going to go cheat on Summer and he's a bad guy after all. And I mean, the fact that we know Fenn's kind of back in town, Kyle's been recast, is YNR trying to transition Summer out of that relationship with Austin, which would be understandable. Is he going to go and have an affair? But then also, there's this mystery invitation that starts to come up throughout the week. Mariah and Kevin and Summer and Austin get this mystery invite for a Valentine's Day party at the Abbott cabin, and we're also seeing like this mystery figure lurking around at the underground. Somebody looking at everyone's sort of getting these invites and looking at the crowd, and everybody goes up to the cabin for Valentine's Day, and they're like, wow, this is weird, we're here, we don't really know who's throwing the party. And it turns out that Abby did it. Abby secretly sent these invites because she didn't want to be alone on Valentine's Day, and everybody who's at the cabin, which is basically all of the younger cast, is up there. Even Noah's there. I don't know where Courtney was, but they're all sort of having fun and playing drinking games, which, by the way, it's inappropriate that Austin gave Summer liquor and said, no, it's okay to drink. You're with people that you trust. So Summer is underage drinking, which Abby should have noted, like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea. And or anybody. Noah, I'm surprised that Summer got away with drinking because her husband told her it was okay. But even though this sort of mystery figure was the easy explanation is that it was Abby sort of lurking around at the underground. But I'm wondering if it's not something else. Is there any chance that Austin is now wanting revenge? Because he stormed out of the party, things got awkward, Fenn said something that sort of offended him, and Austin storms out of the party. So I'm almost wondering if there's any chance that he's working with somebody to, I don't know, somehow cause the underground to collapse. Is there any way that he didn't tell Nick all about the building inspector on purpose? Something just seems really off about him now. He turned on a dime. It all happened really quick. It was like, oh, Austin's such a nice guy 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden I'm wondering if he's a bad guy. But Valentine's Day at the underground, Nick has now tried to work with the building inspector to resolve whatever problems there are, and in fact he's working with a contractor or something who the contractor Nick is working with is saying, yeah, it's bad, but it's fixable, we'll get it taken care of. So there's also that element that someone who knows about this, structural stuff is telling Nick that it's fine, and then Valentine's Day at the underground, everybody's there. In fact, Victoria and Stitch, I think, they got out early just in time. As they were leaving the party, they left their drinks behind, and we started to see pieces of the ceiling falling on that table. So the underground collapse is imminent. If it was that imminent, wouldn't the contractor have said something about it? And I don't know, there's like Austin stormed off for a seemingly kind of innocent party game. I don't know. Could Austin be behind the underground collapse? He's very dark. He did take a gun on Avery, and I think I saw from the preview of next week's show that Avery is going to be present at the underground on Valentine's Day. I don't know if he still cares about that or not, but I'm not sure. I don't know who's going to be caught in the crosshairs. It seems like Victoria and Stitch will make it out just fine, but certainly Nick and Sage are going to be there. They're becoming very, very close. Geez, Sage is just very, congratulations, Nick, for winning your custody case. Nick sent Sage Valentine's gift, so they're definitely becoming close. Nick is faced with this situation where it's Valentine's Day at the underground. It's a huge night for sales. A couple of his bartenders called off. Noah's not there. So he's being forced to work at the underground. He doesn't have anybody, what do you know, doesn't have anybody to watch Faith either. The babysitter calls off on Valentine's Day, and he has to resort to letting Sharon watch Faith. Oh no, the worst thing that could happen to the child. I mean, so let me make sure I got this right, Nick. Sharon's good enough to watch Faith on Valentine's Day when you're in a bind, but she's not good enough to have her rightful share of custody of her own daughter. She's such a huge danger to Faith that she can't have shared custody of her, but when it's convenient for you, it's okay for them to be left alone together. Okay, I see. Whatever. It was cute seeing Faith and Sharon together, and Sharon's lonely on Valentine's Day. We got that beautiful flashback scene of them together, one romantic Valentine's evening, both of them looking so cute, and we all know know, it's just a path. We're a hop, skip, and a jump away from a Nick and Sharon reunion, even if it doesn't look like it right now. But in the meantime, Nick and Sage are really passing the time together. She goes to the underground to help him bartend, and there's lots of sexual undertones. She teaches him how to make a drink called My Silk Panties. And then she has to go back into the back to change into her underground branded shirt because you can't have her wearing just her regular clothes. And she's back in the back and she just has to take off her old shirt, and she happens to be wearing a nice sexy bra, and then Nick happens to walk in while she's standing there in said sexy bra. So he gets an eyeful of her breastises and like tries to back out of the room, but the phone rings and catches him, and it's this awkward moment between them, and Sage is clearly very happy, very happy that he got to see that. It's heating up between those two. I am kind of thinking that I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with this underground collapse, because that's going to put the kibosh on any sexiness that might possibly have happened. I'm assuming both of them are going to be on the inside. Thank goodness, like Sharon and Faith are going to be nowhere near it. But what I'm wondering is there any chance that the collapse of the underground is going to somehow implicate Nick? Maybe is Austin setting up Nick in some kind of way to make it look like whatever's going to happen that causes the instability was more like that Nick was exceedingly negligent? And is there any way that that is going to feed into the custody case? Is there any chance that Sharon is going to go back to a judge and say, wait a minute, I'm not the stable parent. Nick just let a building collapse on half the town. I think just as Nick and Sage are passing the time, getting to know each other and getting close, I'm wondering if Sharon and Dylan are going to be getting close in the same way. As happens every single week, Dylan and Joe get into a fight. Dylan punches Joe and then kind of runs out into the snow and is in the park with a hurt fist just as Sharon is coming upon him. And they've had a history of being good friends and supporting one another, and Dylan was there for Sharon last week when the custody results were announced. So Sharon is feeling like Dylan is the only one in town who really understands her, and it has been there for her. And I think Dylan wants to protect Sharon, wants to help Sharon, and it doesn't hurt to get a few things off of his chest as well. So they're both talking, and Sharon ends up taking him back to her house to get him an ice pack for his fist. And there was nothing sexual about it whatsoever, but there was something intimate about it, and not in an inappropriate way. I just mean these are clearly two people who are able to bond, and especially over the mental illness thing. Dylan is saying, you know, I know what it's like to do something crazy and then regret it later. And, you know, of course, Dylan never really had a whole lot of repercussion for that in the same way that Sharon has, but they're kind of bonding over that. And I wonder if YNR is taking that in a direction of a relationship, because it's clear that Avery and Joe are getting along much more than I think she ever really expected. After Dylan leaves Avery's office where he punched Joe, he left Joe alone in the office with Avery. It's, you know, I guess I shouldn't say, it's like every single week Dylan gets, you know, is ready to punch Joe, but every single week Joe is popping up in Avery's face where it's inappropriate. How many times have both of them told him to stay away? It's, you know, it's clear he has intentions. Everybody knows what the score is, including Dylan, including Avery. And I was surprised that Dylan ran out and left Joe and Avery alone together, because now Joe has this bloody lip and Avery feels I'm sure, responsible to some extent for the fact that Dylan hit him. And again, it's Dylan and Avery. They're both playing right into Joe's hand perfectly, because now Joe's wounded and Avery has to put on some stuff on his lip to make him feel better, and they naturally start to talk about their relationship. And there was a sequence where we saw they were remembering a Valentine's Day past, and we saw it from her perspective, where she wanted to be romantic there out with her husband, and he was focused on business. He was picking the place that they would eat at because it was close to something a client was doing, and then he gets off and runs away and takes a phone call in the middle of their romantic evening, and he's being very dismissive of her the entire time. And so she starts seeking out affection from another guy who asked her to dance and whatever, sort of classic. I don't know how close that was to what actually happened, but then we saw Joe's memory of the situation, or his perspective on the situation, where when he runs off to take the phone call, he tells them, no, I'm out with my wife. I can't do this right now. So it's kind of a hit and miss. It's clear that the feelings did not go away between Avery and Joe. And one thing I thought was significant was Dylan was sort of talking to Sharon about the nature of Joe and Avery's relationship, and he mentioned that, Joe and Avery's marriage didn't end on a clean break. The problem is their relationship ended because she had infidelity, that we had an affair. So it wasn't that Avery and Joe stopped loving each other. It was that Avery kind of disconnected, had this affair, sought out the affection somewhere else, and so therefore, of course, there are residual feelings. So I just don't know what to make of this whole situation, because sometimes when I see Joe and Avery together, I think they make a nice couple, and he sort of brings out this different side of her than Dylan does. So I don't know. I feel a little bit torn. I just have not been feeling impressed with Joe lately. Weiner throws us a little bone here and there, trying to make him seem a little less dastardly, but I still think at this point in time, I think I'm still on board with Avery and Dylan. I think they're both nice people, and I think they make a cute couple. Victor and Nicki have a new house guest, and you could damn well bet that Nicki ain't happy about it. Victor just went off and invited Phyllis to stay with them without talking to her about it at all. So now Phyllis is walking around the ranch with Nicki having absolutely no input about it, and it's awkward. And I completely understand Nicki's perspective in all of this. In fact, that's what drove her off to go drinking where she discovered ONeil. I totally get Nicki's perspective in this. I understand why she's upset. I also understand why Jack is upset about it. He finds out that Phyllis has been released, I suppose, into Victor's custody, or that she's staying with Victor. So Jack rushes over to the ranch, and Nicki was sort of narrating this whole thing perfectly. Jack comes up to the door, and Nicki implied that, well, I guess y'all know who's here now, and you're both getting, both you, Victor, and Phyllis are getting exactly what you want, because what we're getting now is sort of an unlikely collaboration between Victor and Phyllis to kind of get back at Jack. I mean, that's sort of the thing they have in common now. Jack busts into the ranch, and he's like, what are you doing here, Phyllis? Why would you be staying with him? He has a moment alone with her, and she again reiterates how betrayed she feels by him on many levels. The fact that he had carried on with Kelly while she was in the coma, and everything that happened with the mental institution just now. She feels like Jack doesn't understand her anymore, and Jack is stuck in guilty mode. I think he would do anything at this point to make it up to Phyllis. He's totally turned around on Kelly. He wants to get Phyllis the help, but he also doesn't believe that Phyllis is mentally sound, and I think that also really gets at Phyllis too. The fact that it was, you know, many betrayals. This freaking show should just be called, like, I was supposed to be able to trust you and you betrayed me. That's what we should rename it to, because it's all about that now. But so they argue, Phyllis and Jack argue, and she ends up taking off her ring, and or she had taken off her ring, and she gives it back to him. And yeah, it was really sad. As far as Phyllis is concerned, she feels like the relationship is over, and or she wants to make him pay for a certain amount of time. But I don't know, I kind of am enjoying it. I'm especially enjoying Phyllis's nightmares. She's at the ranch this week taking a little nappy nap on the couch, and she has this nightmare that she's back in the mental institution. In fact, it was the very beginning of one of the shows, and I was confused. Like, why is she back in there? I don't get it. But it was a nightmare sequence. She's trapped in the room, and who shows up as a candy striper, ready to give her the medicine, but Kelly. That was a good scene. I like the Phyllis nightmares. They're kind of funny. And it sort of plays up the ridiculousness of the situation. But as soon as Phyllis wakes up, she looks over and Victor is sitting there weirdly watching her, or just sitting there, I don't know. But they have a conversation that needed to happen. I think Phyllis probably needs to understand why I'm being bad today, why Victor is being so supportive of her. And Victor reveals to her that he knows what it's like to have been put in a mental institution and to know that you're sane. And we even saw this flashback of Victor waking up in a hospital bed and not knowing where he was and why he was there. And I don't remember that. The way Eric Braeden looked at the time, I'm positive that I was watching, because he looked very familiar in his younger days there, but I can't remember under what circumstance he got put in a mental institution, and I don't think YNR really explained it. So if anybody knows the secret, the storyline around Victor being committed, please let me know. I'd really I'd really enjoy taking that trip down memory lane. But I mean, the truth is they're both in it thick as thieves for their own selfish reasons. Everybody is. Clearly, Phyllis and Victor are kind of two, birds of the same feather. They both have selfish tendencies at the end of the day. And they're both very vindictive at the end of the day. So this arrangement is working out very well for both of them. And in the previews for next week's show, Phyllis is saying something to someone about that she knows exactly what the score is between her and Victor. She knows that Victor's using her, and she's using him and getting what she wants as well. So this week, Phyllis, the psych evaluation came back, and Phyllis was found sane and fit to stand trial. And of course, Christine was gloating this all over town. She's gonna lose that baby over this whole thing. Paul has begged her to back off, but Christine wants to see Phyllis pay. She even made the comment about, she wants to get her one way or the other. I mean, Al Capone went down for tax evasion, so it doesn't really matter if Phyllis goes away for a crime unrelated to what she did to me and Paul. I just want her to go away. I want her to get her, I want the revenge as well. So Phyllis is found sane, and throughout the course of the week, it was kind of revealed that Victor had talked to the doctor at the mental institution and encouraged him to talk to Kelly. So Victor is wanting Phyllis to be found sane, which felt a little bit confusing to me, because last week I thought Victor was telling Phyllis to kind of fake it, to kind of pretend that she was insane so that she wouldn't be found fit to stand trial. But then again, if that's the case, that's a life sentence into a mental institution. So maybe I had perceived that wrong last week, I'm not sure, but either way, Phyllis is found sane, so she's going to be completely liable for whenever this trial ends up happening. And to what extent, what exactly did Kelly say to the doctor? To what extent are we believing at this point that Kelly is behind everything? I can completely see Kelly going to the doctor and saying her real perspective on Phyllis, because the doctor even mentioned in his report that Phyllis seemed clever and cunning, which probably shouldn't have been in there. But how much did Kelly influence that? Jack is feeling completely on to her. He goes to Kelly, really lays into her. He finds out that Kelly had talked to the doctor and wants to know, why would you do that? I see what you're up to. You wanted Phyllis out of the way, and just so you know, getting Phyllis out of the way is not going to get me back. And Kelly is playing it so victim-y, like, oh, I don't understand how you could think that about me, Jack. I'm completely innocent. I'm just innocent. But we're also seeing little strings coming off of her every single week, more and more, that I think indicate that she's the one that's really Looney Tunes. Even Victor goes to see Kelly and wants to encourage her to go ahead and get Jack back. You want to stay, you go ahead and stay with Jack. It's in my best interest to keep Phyllis and him apart. I think really just, again, wanting to take something away from Jack. Remember that scene over the holidays in the Christmas tree lot where they go into a bidding war over the Christmas tree? It's got nothing to do with the Christmas tree. Victor wants the thing that Jack wants, and he can take it away from him. It's really quite sadistic, and we're seeing it play out with the Jabot stuff, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But during the scene with Victor and Kelly, there was something about Kelly's demeanor where she just said she seemed to feel grateful toward Victor for offering to help her, or for supporting her, or saying, you should have Jack, you go ahead. We both have, Victor was not making any bones about it. He said, I know what I want. I don't think Victor was actually lying or manipulating intentionally anyway, but Kelly, I think, took it like, I just seemed to fuel her craziness, like, oh, even somebody believes in me and Jack, thank goodness. I mean, even Lily doesn't believe in Kelly anymore. It seems like, even though Lily's been really there for Kelly, she started to question her now that the Phyllis thing has gotten very severe, as if, like, if Phyllis really did try to poison Kelly, why would everybody think Kelly shouldn't press charges? I would. If I was Kelly and I got poisoned, I would want the revenge. But Kelly's just being very victim-y and very passive, and I think that makes me not trust her even more. There was a scene in the athletic club where Avery walks in the door and Kelly jumps up, cannot wait to talk to Avery, which also seems sort of unstable of her. Like, why do you want to have anything to do with Avery? Just stay away from these people. But it's not. Kelly's just getting more and more nuts, and Avery's talking to Kelly, says something like, you're a psycho, I think you're the one who belongs in Fairview, and Kelly reaches for a knife on the table, like a butter knife or something, and sort of holds it at Avery, saying, don't you say that, that's not true. So we saw last week Kelly, there was an implication from Stitch that Kelly had spent some time in a mental institution, so I'm assuming that she, at the end of the day, is going to be the one who ends up in a straitjacket. Is that sort of the vibe you guys are getting? I don't know. Avery's come up with this plan, and Jack resisted it at first, but Avery is thinking, I cannot let Phyllis stand trial for this crime because she could very well go to jail. I think that, both Avery and Jack are of the mind that Phyllis did it, and that she's not well, and that they need to pursue an insanity plea in order to get Phyllis off the hook for this. And so Avery came up with the idea of staging something to set Phyllis off in public and allow, there to be witnesses to whatever it is, and then be able to use that information on the stand. And Jack at first is like, whoa, that's the kind of thinking, that's the kind of thing that got me into this mess, where I'm not honest with Phyllis, and where I don't, I trick her into doing something that's supposedly for her own good. But Avery becomes more and more convinced that this is what she needs to do, so she's planning to stage some kind of something between Phyllis and Kelly. And I don't know, like, whatever it is, I'm thinking that it's gonna be made to make Phyllis look like she's nuts, but I wonder if it's gonna be Kelly who's gonna look nuts instead. The corporate espionage is really just another example of Victor wanting to get his revenge on Jack. He pretended that he gave Ashley back her formula, and then this week took out a full-page ad in some magazine or newspaper or something talking all about Brash and Sassy's new scent, which just so happens to pretty much mirror what Ashley's been developing, right down to the marketing campaign. So it's a clear copy. Ashley is about to hit the roof. I felt bad for her, although at the same time, like, I mean, obviously it's wrong what Victor is doing, and she does go and she does confront him, and she is enraged, and she should be. It's weird though that there's this condition that this scent has to be a success in order for her to get the co-CEO position from Jack. That part of the storyline is a little ridiculous to me. We all know that Ashley's put so much of herself into this fragrance because she wants that position of power. She wants to resume her rightful place at the head of Jabot. Well, why couldn't Jack just give that to her? Especially now that the reason they're gonna be losing on this fragrance is because of Victor. Victor's copied her scent, rushed it to market, and is gonna be there to do it before she ever has the chance. Well, I mean, it's too bad. I think it'll be a good opportunity for the two companies to go head to head, but why punish Ashley for it? Just give her the freaking co-CEO position, okay, Jack? It's your fault anyway. It's your rivalry with Victor that has let this all happen in the first place. I think Victor needs the money. I mean, but then again, he sold Chancellor to get the money to recover from the whole Bonaventure mess. So I think Victor likes the money that he's going to make off of this fragrance, but yet again, it's an example of one of a million, thousand, trillion of Victor just wanting to get back at Jack. I think the Jack part is icing stuck up in his mustache. Billy and Chelsea and Gabriel and Sage had a very awkward Valentine's Day party foursome this week. I don't know why they all keep forcing this relationship when it's clear that these four people don't necessarily get along. I mean, it's really all about the connection between Chelsea and Gabriel. But Chelsea and Gabriel come over Gabriel and Sage come over to Chelsea and Billy's house, which, by the way, puts Adam into the house with his son yet again. And it's kind of a weird vibe. Chelsea and Gabe are the only ones that are really getting along, and it's obvious and has been made obvious throughout the week that Sage feels on the outside, and so does Billy to another extent, that these two people are pursuing a relationship with Billy and Sage sort of seeming on the outside. And there was a moment where Billy noted how Sage seemed to feel sad when thinking about children, and it was later revealed back at her apartment that she's not able to have children. She confided this information in Adam, and he managed to scrounge up a little bit of sympathy for her. I don't know how that's going to play into the story. There's just something, it seems like odd information to give to us at this point. Maybe to stop people from thinking that she's going to end up pregnant with Nick's child. I'm not sure, or maybe it just might have been to get the audience to connect with her a little bit more. The information just seemed odd. Billy also is thinking about his daughter this week. Valentine's Day was Delia's birthday, and so he goes to her crash memorial site and he begins talking out loud to her. I really enjoyed his performance. I think the new Billy seems jovial a lot of the time, and I don't think we've seen the darkness from the character since the new actor took over. And I saw that hurt this week. I saw that vulnerability, and I think it was an important scene to kind of help us connect in and remember the fullness of this, the depth of the character of Billy. He's at the crash site, and Delia shows up in her form, in a John Abbott ghost sort of way, and she begins talking to her father and saying, "You seem consumed by your hatred of Adam, and I think you need to learn to forgive." And Billy is obviously going through this process where he knows he needs to. And especially if he's going to become a real father to Connor. He can't harbor this deep resentment toward Connor's father, and he doesn't want to end up taking out any of it on Connor. So it was a sort of a revelation on Billy's part. Now, while he's at this crash site, Adam has come over to see Chelsea yet again. He has been doing little tricks here and there, bringing her over, bringing Chelsea over to his place and having her pick out the furniture and confiding in her little things about himself. And oh, he answers the door shirtless and clearly doing all of the things that he knows is going to give him an in with Chelsea. And he's sitting over at her apartment, and they're just talking about their lives, and he's confiding about his quote-unquote relationship with Sage. And it's really obvious that Adam has begun to push all of Chelsea's buttons, and they have a moment where they embrace, and of course you know that's exactly the moment when Billy walks in. I don't know how much longer Adam can keep up this charade. I really don't, because it's become obvious that he's hitting on another man's woman. He revealed this week that he and Sage did get married, so that way he doesn't have to let that truth come out in a way that he can't control it. But it's so hard to believe that they're newlyweds when the tension between Sage and Gabriel is palatable, and when every chance he gets, Gabriel is up in Chelsea's face trying to be all sensitive and understanding and connecting with her. So many good comments this week. I think it's because of the sweeps. It was like everybody was just bam, bam, bamming with the comments this week, and just a lot of opinions out there. I'm going to start out with Silvana. She left me a voicemail saying, "He's doing it. Adam is doing it. He has wormed his way into Chelsea's head, and if he continues to play this patience game, I can see him seducing her into an emotional affair." I think so too. I think Chelsea's really starting to fall for it. She's really starting to buy into it. It's working. I agree. Silvana also says Sage is desperate for love. Sage is desperate for the love and affection that she could not get from Gabriel. So the only option is Nick. And there was a scene this past week where Adam was telling Sage all about Nick and Sharon, and pretty much letting Sage know the score, that Nick and Sharon always find their way back together. And as Silvana was commenting, she thinks that Adam was saying that not to be cruel towards Sage, but to kind of clue her in on the fact that that's true. It's all just temporary. And if anybody should know that, Adam should. His relationship with Sharon, although I enjoyed it quite a lot, it was a stop on the way along this Nick and Sharon reunion tour, which is constantly on. Nippy fan also left me a voicemail that said, "Why is Sage congratulating Nick about taking a child away from her mother after explaining this week that she can't have a child? You would think that she would have more sympathy toward Sharon. Yeah, I thought that was a good point. It kind of rang true with me too. Or maybe Sage is so interested in Nick without regard to Sharon because she doesn't have children. Maybe she's not able to connect in that way. I'm just still having a hard time figuring out how the Sage not being able to have children thing is gonna play into the storyline. The ONeil stuff. Gina left me a voicemail this week just singing Kristoff St. John's praises, and I could not agree more. Gina was saying we need more opportunities like this for Kristoff St. John to shine as ONeil. I mean, the Winters family has been on the back burner for a really long time, and seeing ONeil this week, it really reminded me how much I like him. He looked tired. Every word that came out of his mouth, I was hanging on, and it really was a powerful, dynamic performance by Kristoff St. John. And also something Gina had mentioned that I was thinking too is that Kristoff recently lost his son, a young son. So I'm not sure where we are in reality as far as when that happened versus when Kristoff St. John is filming. I would assume he would be taking a break to mourn the loss of his son, but I couldn't help kind of wondering if there's any chance Kristoff was sort of using that pain and channeling it into what's going on with ONeil right now, because it was just so powerful. Now let's see. Oh, Anna had left me a voicemail about something that I commented about last week, which was the fact that, or it was a comment that somebody left me last week about Victor stole Ashley's fragrance, but Ashley stole Victor's sperm. And Anna was asking me to elaborate on that storyline where Ashley stole Victor's sperm. I'm totally pulling this from my memory. I've done zero research, and a lot of years have gone by, and a lot of things have gone by in between that and now. But I believe my recollection was that Nicki, for some reason, had Victor's sperm frozen and put into like a cryogenics lab, and I'm not sure what went wrong or why, but Ashley totally broke into the lab and stole Victor's sperm, impregnated herself with it, and that is the story of Abby. Ashley passed Abby off for a number of years as being Brad Carlton's child, my sweet, sweet Brad, who I miss so much, but I'm so grateful to be able to experience the Dawn Diamond on Bold and the Beautiful. So Ashley passed off Abby as Brad's daughter for a number of years, and it wasn't until not even that long ago, a couple years ago, that finally the truth was revealed that it was Victor's. But you should go and look that up and tell me if I got anything wrong. I kind of think I'm right, though. That's how I remember it anyway. It happened. It really, really happened. Abby is a result of a sperm steal, which maybe makes sense on some weird level. Danielle Cottrell on YouTube says, Allie, please don't forget how Avery and Dylan started. I am so over people defending Dylan and bad-mouthing Joe. He was married to Avery when Dylan was taking his money and sleeping in his bed with his wife. Very good point. I know, it's hard. I don't know why I keep flip-flopping back and forth. I liked Joe, but I think Y&R needs to give us that a little bit more. Remind us of their relationship prior to Dylan coming into the picture for that to kind of fully be realized. And they're starting to do that this week. We saw a couple of flashbacks, so that's good. TV Soap Fan on YouTube said Joe kind of inserting himself into Avery and Dylan's relationship it's not all Avery's fault at all. Dylan is falling right into Joe's traps just as much as Avery is. They are both guilty of it. And that's true too. If Avery and Dylan wanted to stay together and could prioritize their relationship, Joe wouldn't be able to work his way in on either front. want, but he clearly is, and I think we're clearly migrating toward a reunion with Avery and Joe on some level. So those are all comments this week. One thing I was kind of surprised about was that nobody's commented to me about the Victoria Rowell thing. Gary, if you're out there, I bet you're going to have some opinions about this, because it was revealed this week or published this week or whatever that Victoria Rowell filed a lawsuit against CBS and The Young and the Restless this week, and it's sort of weird because, and I'm thinking of Gary because he had mentioned this a couple weeks ago, that there was a rumor out there that the character of Drusilla had been recast, and if you looked at the person they said was supposedly had been recast versus Victoria Rowell, the original Drusilla. Sorry, I hope I set that up correctly. If you don't know Drusilla or Victoria Rowell, but there was this report that she was being recast, and the person who was being recast was not the original actress, but looked a lot like the original actress. And the original actress, Victoria Rowell, has always been very vocal. Like, every time I turn around, she's still talking about YNR and still have an opinion about YNR, considering it was a gig that she's been gone from for a really long time. I always did think, wow, she really still gets in there. She digs in there. She's still really critical about YNR. And it sort of seemed like she really wanted that job back. Like, YNR could have at a million different points recast Drusilla, and I've always kind of wondered, why didn't they? Especially when it did seem clear that Victoria Rowell would want to come back and reprise this famous role, and a role that she has quite a large fan base for. So I think it's kind of weird that recast rumor came out a couple of weeks ago, and then this week we're hearing that she's actually suing CBS. And I should have printed the article, but the gist of it was that she felt she was being denied the job because she had been publicly critical of The Young and the Restless and their portrayal of the African American characters, and in general maybe a little talking a lot about the types of things that go on behind the scenes. So she's alleging that she is being discriminated against, not getting the job because she's been publicly talking about YNR a lot over the past couple of years. So CBS commented back and said that's ridiculous. And I don't know how long the lawsuit's going to last. I don't know if they're going to ultimately settle out of court, but I mean, she must know that must have been a trigger for her. Like, I'm never going to get this job back, so I'm going to sue him, because there's no going back now. I mean, you can pretty much bet now you will never see Victoria Rowell in the role of Drusilla. Even if she wins the lawsuit, they're not going to turn around and just give it to her. So I almost am kind of wondering if, in a way, the lawsuit will end up giving us a new Drusilla. You do have to wonder, from all of these years, the easiest thing to do would have been to just cast Drusilla. It would have bolstered up that whole family. It would have given Neil so much more to do. It would have given Lily back her mother. I mean, adding Drusilla into the Winters family, back into the Winters family, just would have been the absolute a solution to so many things that we've all been talking about for so many years. And I've always wondered why they didn't do it. But maybe now, I don't know. Maybe after the lawsuit's all settled, they'll be like, all right, well, nothing else to do. Then we're just gonna go ahead and recast. If YNR didn't want to use her, though, did they have to? I mean, they didn't have to. They could have recast her at any point along the way. I mean, plenty of actors get recast. So that's kind of hard, too, like in an entertainment industry where some of it is just based on an X factor as to whether or not you're going to get cast. There, if you're an engineer and you have a resume and it says I've done this, that, and this, and it's just a on paper hiring thing, it's one thing. But when you're an actor or actress, you sort of have to, I guess it would. I mean, it could be considered discrimination because you're sort of looking at the whole vibe of the person, which is so individual. Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But I was kind of surprised that nobody mentioned that this week because it's such a hot topic. So feel free to sound off and let me know what you guys think about all of that. Drama on the screen, drama behind the screen. It's all there. I mean, it's if it's true, it's very, very serious. I wonder what kind of evidence she could possibly bring forward. I have no idea. I mean, maybe it's all out there. So feel free to link me to any articles. All I saw was her press conference and CBS's response. So we'll see how that unfolds, and we'll see how next week's show unfolds. Ooh, next week we are definitely going to have the plane crash. We're definitely going to have the underground crash. Next week should just be titled Crash. I really can't wait for it. So go ahead and give me your comments about this week's stuffs. You can call into my voicemail at area code 309-588-4569. You can go to yrchat.com and leave comments there. You can go to Facebook or Twitter. If you are listening to the podcast, hi podcasts! I haven't heard from any of you guys in a while, so maybe you need to call into the voicemail. I want to hear from some podcast peeps. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave comments on the YouTube. Whatever works best for you is totally fine with me. I can't wait to hear what you think about this week's show and next week's show. Don't be afraid to leave comments throughout next week because it's going to be big and I can't wait to hear from you. So everybody, like, put on your seatbelts, tighten your belts. It's going to probably be a very bumpy but very, very exciting ride. So I'm looking forward to it. I love you guys and I'll see you next Sunday. It should be good. Bye.